Yep.
Okay. Bethany, let me let you introduce yourself. You're my co-facilitator this evening.
Hello, I'm Bethany Maffey, also a board member. I have just a few announcements for everyone this evening. Just a brief reminder to speak at a slower pace for interpreters and for our neurodiverse families. Please don't forget to fill out the exit survey that will be posted in the chat periodically prior to leaving the meeting. Share thoughts on the skills and questions the next superintendent of Boston should have, including experience being a transformative leader for special education and special education interview questions for next superintendent that should be part of every decision made at every school by uploading a 3-minute video, sending a chat, or filling out the survey, or emailing superintendentsearch@bostonpublicschools.org. You can also give public testimony. No one has testified with a focus on special education for the next superintendent yet. So you can, actually tonight there is a student session, listening session. The next public listening session is Saturday, April 2nd from 10 a.m. to noon. And we'll put where you can register in the chat right now. And there's more information available at www.publicschools.org page /8924. And that will also be popped in the chat.
Thank you. And so other announcement that we have, I think Sandy, we're going to launch a brief poll, or we'll put in the chat a poll. So we're going to ask all the interpreters to also ask that on their channels for all the participants to participate in this poll. So just putting school name. How did you receive the notification about the SpEdPAC meeting? Was it email, robocall, text, a friend, or printed SpEdPAC flyer from your school? And then also the answer, is your school sending home SpEdPAC meeting flyers with your child? And Sandy's going to put the link for that poll in the chat. And one other announcement before we get started with the program. On Monday, March 28th, 6 to 7, Massachusetts Rehab Commission, Services Mass Rehab Commission is going to be holding a presentation for students and families in collaboration with the Office of Special Education, and presenting an introduction to MRC services for students and families. And we'll also put the link. Before we move on to the presenters, we just wanted to acknowledge any BPS presenters who are here, anyone from BPS who wants to, and I think there are several BPS staff, so we want to do that, I think, before we go on to the presenters. And maybe Sandy, you can help us find them on the screen.
Dr. Estrom, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's event. I am happy to be a part of tonight's events and listening to everything going on. My name is Nadine Ekstrom, and I am the Senior Advisor to the Superintendent for Special Education. And I am excited to be here tonight and to listen to everything that Boston has to offer.
Thank you. Marcia?
Hi, everybody. Marcia Fitzpatrick, Assistant Director of Transition, and I'm always happy to be here at SpEdPAC. And tonight I'll be presenting on guardianship.
I missed anyone? I don't think so. And I am Joshi Perez. I am the Special Education Family Engagement Coordinator. I'm going to put the upcoming events on the chat so that you could take a look at those. Take it away, Lolita or Bethany.
All righty. So Bethany, I'll let you take it away, and just remind everyone, we're going to try to hold the questions towards the end of each presenter, just so we can maximize the time that we have. So if you have questions that you want to put in the chat as well, one of the board members will be making sure to record them so that we can get that, and then we can take live questions as well. All right, Bethany.
Thank you, Nalita, and thank you, Joshi and Sandy and everybody. Our first presenter for the evening is Meredith H. Green, and she's an attorney with Day Pitney LLP, and she'll be presenting on special needs trust.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen and get my PowerPoint up. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here today. So I am going to talk to you all about special needs trusts. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the objectives and why we need to do special needs planning. So the first and most obvious and common issue that we have special needs planning for is for those of our children who are going to be eligible for government benefits. A special needs trust and special needs planning allows that child to maintain eligibility for government benefits while still being able to have an inheritance from parents, grandparents, or other relatives. Another reason you may do special needs planning is to maintain a standard of living. The support and assistance that the government provides is mandatory and necessary for a lot of our kids, but it can be pretty minimal. So if you are looking for your child to have some of those extras in life, the special needs trust and the special needs planning allows for that to happen through an inheritance while maintaining that government benefit. We also have clients who maybe aren't eligible for government benefits, but are what we call failure to thrive. They may not be eligible for benefits, but yet they're not capable of maintaining their own finances. They may be easily misled by someone who pretends to be a friend. I know with my own son, he would give the shirt off his back and not realize that he's being taken advantage of. So for those individuals who need a special needs trust just for financial management, this works well. And the other reason is so that that money that you may be leaving for your child with a disability is managed by someone that you pick. This is not something that is done in planning after your death where somebody else, whether it's a judge or other family members, are choosing who's in charge. You're making those decisions before your death. So there are two types of special needs trusts. And I should say there's no difference between special needs trust and supplemental needs trust. They're interchangeable. And unfortunately, I'll probably go back and forth. I tend to say special needs trust, but it's the same thing. So on the left side here is a self-settled trust. This is a special needs trust that is only used in rare circumstances. This might be because a child received an inheritance, because a family member named a child directly to receive money upon their death, or you had a 401k or retirement plan and you didn't change the beneficiary designation, so your child received that asset outright. Well, now that child is going to be kicked off government benefits. So there is this planning you can do that you can use this self-settled trust. I call it an uh-oh trust. Uh-oh, my kid now has this money and he's going to be kicked off benefits. We need him to have the benefits. You can utilize this trust. It also can be used in elder law planning if there is an elder in your family who's going into a nursing home and you want to preserve that elder's money while allowing them to have mass health. That elder, that grandmother, can put her money into this self-settled trust for your child and still be eligible for Medicaid without that 5-year look back. I'm not going to get too much into this special needs trust because it could take an hour just to describe that, but I just want it in the back of your minds that if your child does receive money that kicks him off benefits, there is planning tools out there. On the right, this third-party trust, this is where we're really going to focus our discussion tonight. This is what I call the inheritance trust. This should be a cornerstone of your own estate plan. This is where you're going to develop a trust, and anytime your child receives an inheritance, that inheritance should be directed into this third-party trust. So this is very common to be used in parents' estate planning, maybe even grandparents' estate planning, so that when the parents die, the child with a disability, their share of the parent's inheritance doesn't go to them outright, but it goes into this special needs trust. And that needs to be outlined in your own estate plan. Your will or your trust, your beneficiary designation if you have life insurance or retirement account, has to specifically name this third-party trust in order for your child to still maintain eligibility for benefits. So I mentioned life insurance. Life insurance is a very common tool that parents will use and keep in order to fund their child's trust. It's a very common tool for parents and families with young children, so that if the parent who is the breadwinner suddenly dies, that life insurance helps those children get through to adulthood. And then a lot of people let their life insurance lapse. For parents who have a child with a disability, it's very common for them to have what we call whole life insurance that doesn't lapse after a term of years, but stays throughout the parent's lifetime. And when the parent dies, it can fund that special needs trust right when your disabled child needs it, because you're no longer funding them. So the third-party trust has to have specific bells and whistles in it. It's not a general trust that you might have for your other kids, or if you have your own trust for certain reasons. It's not a sub-trust within it. It has to have specific language in there. It needs to say that the grantor, which is usually the parents, that their intention is to supplement government benefits, not to supplant them or to support the beneficiary. The intent of this trust is to allow the government to provide the benefits your child is eligible for, and then the money in this trust provides all of the extras, all of those things that are going to make your child's life wonderful and meaningful and just as amazing as you would have wanted it to be. That money is there to fulfill all of those extras that the government doesn't provide. In most cases, this special needs trust is revocable, meaning you can amend it or change it at any time, as long as there's no money in there. And again, I call it an inheritance trust because for most of my clients, the trust doesn't get funded until mom and dad die. There are some times where maybe grandparents might leave money to the trust, in which case mom and dad might still be alive, but the trust gets money into it because grandparents have died. And at that point, the trust would then become irrevocable, meaning you can't change it anymore. It's set in stone. This third-party trust is very flexible, meaning it can pay for anything that your child needs. So again, it's not supposed to be there to support him. It's supposed to be for everything else. So it can be for maybe better reading, better eyeglasses than Medicaid and Mass Health is paying for. It can be to pay for extra therapies that you're not getting through Mass Health or other insurance. It can be used to pay for a vacation, recreation, Special Olympics, engagement in anything, transportation, another iPad because your child has broken the third one this year. It really is used for anything and everything that is going to make your child's life meaningful. There is no payback provision. And what I mean by that is upon your child's death, the trust, you're going to create the trust so it says what happens to the money that might still be in the trust when your child dies. So for instance, I have 4 kids. My oldest son has an intellectual disability. So his trust might say when Connor passes away, the money is going to go to Connor's kids if he has any. Otherwise, it's going to go in equal shares to my other 3 children or maybe my grandchildren.
Excuse me, Meredith, just wanted to tell you another 10 minutes.
Thank you. So this does not pay back to the state. So the money in there does not go back to the state. It is safe for what we call remainder beneficiaries. So one of the other elements is full discretion to the trustee, meaning whoever you name as trustee is going to make the decisions as to how your child is getting these assets. Your child does not have what I call gimme rights. He doesn't have the right to say, I want to participate in this program, you need to fund it. Obviously, he can ask the trustee if he has that capacity, or the guardian can ask the trustee, but the trustee is the one making those decisions. So who you choose as trustee is a very, very important decision. So there are all sorts of options for trustees. You can have siblings, you can have professionals, you can have corporations, you can have a blend of that. You can have a professional trustee with a family member. It's really what works for you and your family. So I'm going to talk a little bit about government benefits because this is what we're trying to preserve. So this first benefit, SSDI, this is Social Security Disability Income. This is a program in the Social Security realm that your child might be entitled to in two different ways. The first is if your child works themselves, they will be contributing to Social Security, and they may have enough quarters of employment to be entitled to Social Security on their own work record. The second way is if your child isn't able to work and you are contributing to Social Security. When a parent retires, if a child is a DAC, disabled adult child, which basically means that child is incapable of earning $1,350 a month, that child can collect Social Security disability based on the parent's work record. So if the parent starts collecting, and say the parent is collecting $3,000 in Social Security when they retire, their disabled adult child can receive up to 50% of that. So the child could receive $1,500. There is a family maximum, so it might not be exactly that much, but if he's the only one also collecting on your work record, he would get $1,500 a month in Social Security. And this is entitlement. You as a worker have paid into the Social Security system, and so therefore you are entitled to this benefit, and your child as a disabled adult child is entitled to this benefit. So there are other rules that are on this PowerPoint, but I know I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to go over all of them. SSI, this is supplemental security income. If you notice, it doesn't say Social Security in here at all. It is run by the Social Security Administration, but it's not the pot of money of Social Security that we as workers are putting into the Social Security system. This is a totally separate tax bracket, but it's run by Social Security Administration. So if your child is disabled, and I'm only going to talk about when they're an adult, 18 to 65, and they meet the asset test, which is less than $2,000 of assets, and they have low income, they could be eligible for SSI. If they are eligible for SSI, they automatically get Medicaid, which we call Mass Health here in Massachusetts. So SSI, this is a program that if your child is over 18, is unable to earn a living, and has less than $2,000 in assets, they can receive up to $841 a month. And then the Massachusetts can supplement that. That money, that $841, is reduced in certain situations. The first is if your child receives cash or unearned income, that DAC benefit that I just talked about, that $1,500 of Social Security that your child might receive when you retire, that's unearned income. So unearned income, or if your child receives cash, it's a dollar for dollar reduction off that $841. If your child is able to work a little bit, and we want our kids to work for all sorts of reasons, we don't count the first $65 of employment. After that, their SSI is reduced 50 cents on the dollar for what they've earned. So if they've earned $265 that month, we don't count the 65, then there's $200 left. SSI will be reduced by $100, 50 cents on the dollar. The other is in-kind support and maintenance. So if your child isn't paying rent or paying their fair share of the living expenses in the house they're living in, then that 841 is automatically reduced by 1/3. So that child will receive closer to 555, 560. You can use an ABLE account, which I don't have time to get into today, but if you look into ABLE accounts, you can use that to help pay for that fair share of living expenses and try to maximize that 841. So I know I'm sort of at the tail end here, so I wanted to know if there's any questions.
So we can maybe start with someone who has their hands up and then also take questions from the chat.
One parent with their hands up, but that was up a while ago. I can ask them if they have a question. Basilia?
Basilia, can you unmute to ask your question?
I'm asking them to unmute. They're not. We can move on to Sheila.
Hi, this is Sheila, and I was wondering, what third party of trust, is there like a specific like company that we go through, or is it through a lawyer? What third party trust do we go to? Because if I inherit a home and I want to leave it to my kids, who would I like go to as a third party?
Yeah, so you would go to an estate planning attorney and they would draft your will, maybe a trust, and then you would want to go to an estate planning attorney that has special needs background, that knows how to draft a special needs trust for your child to receive that inheritance. But that would be, you'd need to go to a lawyer for that.
Okay, thank you. And Iris?
Thank you. One thing I wanted to do is piggyback off Sheila really quickly and ask, do you have to make that arrangement prior to your inheritance of that home? Do you have to get that lawyer prior to your inheritance?
So it doesn't have to be prior to the parent, right? So if you're the mom, it doesn't have to be prior to you inheriting a home, but it has to be prior to your dying and your child inheriting the home. It has to be in place before your death. But if you're the one inheriting, it doesn't have to be in place then. It has to be in place before you die and your child inherits any assets from you.
Really quickly, what if I don't have what if I can't list a trustee? What if I have no family members or don't have any friends or don't know anybody who could step in and help?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there are professional trustees who are out there and some lawyers do it. There are some trust companies. There's also nonprofits, some ARCs. I know the Bristol County ARC used to act as trustee. And then there's what's called pooled trusts, which are trusts where it's a special needs trust, but it's almost like a big master trust. So your child would have a slice of the pie and it would be used for your child. Your money would be used for your child, but it's all invested in a big pool. And there's one organization or nonprofit that runs all of the trusts. So that might be something that you can look into. And there's an organization called Plan of Massachusetts that has a trust like that. There's a couple other, if you Google pooled, P-O-O-L-E-D, pooled special needs trusts, you can find some organizations that way. And then I think you would contact them directly, and you would still need to direct your assets into that pooled trust via your own will or your own estate planning document.
I think we'll take maybe one question from the chat I'll read, and then we'll have to move on to the next presentation. And then hopefully we'll have additional time at the end of all the presenters so that we can take more questions if that's okay. One question that I'm looking at, we have several, but probably several people have this question. Lisa's asking, if you have more than one disabled child, do you need separate trusts or can one be used for both?
So you can have one for both, and it really depends on your child's needs. So I have some families who will do one trust for both siblings, and in that way, all of the money can be used for either of them, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in equal shares. Because for a lot of my families, maybe one child would be eligible for residential funding, and housing is a big drain on money on the pool. So that child may not need as much as another child who's trying to live in the community and maybe needs a little more resources. So yes, there are a lot of families who do one trust for multiple disabled children. There are some reasons why people would do separate trusts, but a lot of families will do one trust for all of their disabled children.
Thank you so much, Meredith, and hopefully you can hang on and we can take more questions towards the end. Hopefully we'll have the time, but just in the interest of time.
Sorry, Bethany, I'm just going to jump in and say, since we have all the questions, we can send them to Meredith and we can put out a Q&A doc after to make sure everyone gets the answers if we don't have time.
Awesome. So our next presenter is Stephanie Biggs, and Stephanie is an attorney at Volunteer Lawyers Project, and she's going to talk about guardianship forms and presentations. And I already see a few questions there. So Stephanie's going to help us all in getting down into the nitty gritty of the forms. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. I'm going to try to do a screen share. I think I may have too many things on my computer here. Let's just see if we can do this. Sorry. There we go. Can people see this?
Not yet. Are you
Not yet. Okay.
Just make sure you have whatever you're.
How about
okay.
this?
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Okay, good. Meredith, first of all, thank you so much for that presentation. This is so helpful to me because sometimes we have clients at the Volunteer Lawyers Project who ask about trusts, and I have now all your information down here, and I'm going to give you an email probably next week, if that would be okay.
Perfect.
Okay. And as a colleague, if you would like to chime in on anything that I present for guardianship, I would love to hear it. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about tonight is just getting guardianship. Because unless you have the right medical documentation, Meredith could grab me off the street and say, I want to be Stephanie's guardian. And the court would say, well, okay, what proof do you have? And so for individuals who have developmental disability, there is a clinical team report that is used. Now we're going to go through the clinical team report, and I'm going to concentrate on 2 pages of the clinical team report. The first page, where you have to have all the examination dates. Can people see this? I may have to blow it up here a little.
Yeah, if you maximize, it's a little small, but that's
okay,
better.
Let me keep going here. Okay. Okay, so does everybody see this first page? We have 3 people who must complete the clinical team report. And this is for individuals that you are seeking guardianship for, who have issues dealing with communication, self-care, home living, social skills, community use, self-direction, health, safety, and functioning academics, leisure, and work. So for those people, you're going to need a clinical team report, and 3 people have to sign that and examine your person. Has to be a licensed psychologist, a registered physician specializing in maybe neuropsychology, psychiatry, pediatrics, and the date of the examination, and a licensed social worker. Those 3 examination dates on the first page must be complete. When you file that clinical team report, it is good for 180 days of the first examination date. So how do you remember 180 days? Clinical team report has 18 letters in it. So if you add a 0, that's 180 days. So let's say the first examination date was January 1st, okay? January 1st was our first examination date. Second examination date is March 2nd. Third examination date is June 15th. 180 days from January 1st is June 29th. So you have up until June 29th to have 3 examinations of your person and get it ready to be filed. Okay, so let's keep going on with the clinical team report. I'm going to give you a quiz at the end of this because I want you to remember those 180 days. Okay, so this is the first part of it. That's the second part where the examination dates are. Let me just pull this down a little. That's the third part. That's the last part of the clinical team report. We're going to move along to the medication list. Now, the medications are very important. You know what medications your person is getting. They're vitamins, if they're antidepressants, but most important is if your person is getting an antipsychotic medication. That's going to trigger something called a Rogers, which I'm not going to go into tonight, but I want you to remember that. Stephanie said, oh, there's antipsychotic medication. I have to make sure that I put that down, and I have to make sure that I bring that to the attorney's attention who's going to help me file this if you come to the Volunteer Lawyers Project. Okay, so now we're on page 2. Now here we are on page 3. This is more information that one of those 3 people is going to ask and is going to put on this clinical team report. When you take this to those 3 people and they fill this out, before you leave the doctor, the psychologist, or the social worker, you should go over the clinical team report yourself. And if you've got any questions about what's written there, bring it to their attention. Because this is what the court is going to look at. This is the only document that the court is going to have to see, yes, that your person needs a guardian. Okay, you see something here called conservatorship. That's not necessary to be filled out for guardianship. Conservatorship deals more with money. Guardianship deals with the health, safety, and welfare of someone who needs a guardian. Okay, now we're at the second most important page of this. This is the signature page. All the people who examined your person on that first page have to sign the last page, and they have to fill this out. We know doctors have interesting handwriting, so we need this to be very clear. Their signature can be their signature, but they need to print all the other information. Sometimes the date that they examine your person will not correspond with the date that they sign it, because there may be a couple of people in their office. They may have a psychologist and a doctor in there. The doctor examines your person on one day, the psychologist on another, and when he or she is through with it, they give it back, for the signatures. They need to put down their licensure, their city, their town. If you are licensed out of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it's not going to apply. These people have to be licensed within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Okay. Back to this page again, which I can't emphasize enough. These are the 3 examination dates, And you see that area that says area of specialty and the date of examination over to the far right? I can't tell you how many people forget to put that in there, but you're not going to do that. You're going to remember that. Okay, so we've done all of this. We've gone over the last page. Let me see if I can reduce that a little to put it in perspective. So all those 3 people are going to sign that. You're going to read it. You're going to understand it. And then you are going to call the Volunteer Lawyers Project to ask for help, and we will put that on the last slide. Okay, there's a second kind of medical documentation that you need to get guardianship of somebody. And here's the example I'm going to use. Nalita and I are going to a Red Sox game. We're going to have sodas. We're going to drink maybe a glass of beer. I don't know if she drinks beer. I don't. I'll just have a soda. And we're going to have hot dogs and catch up. I want to hear about what's happening with her life. I'm going to tell her what's happening with my life. And at the 8th inning, she and I get bored. The Red Sox are ahead and we leave the ballpark. As we leave, someone hits a home run and hits me in the head and I go down. Up until that point, I have what the law calls capacity. I have the ability to make decisions on my own. But after I get hit with that, I don't have capacity. And Nalita files for guardianship for me. So unlike a clinical team report, where we have to have all 3 people provide an examination, for a medical certificate, it's only one. It's one of these 4 people is going to examine the person who needs to get guardianship.
Stephanie, just so you know, about 10 more minutes.
Thank you, Nalita. Thank you very much. We're out of the ballpark now and we're now back in business with a medical certificate. Thank you. So one of these 4 people is going to examine the person who needs a guardian, and they're going to fill it out. And again, we have an examination date, the date of examination. Let me see if I can just pull that up a little and pull this down. Oops, nope, sorry. There we go. Okay, remember the clinical team report was 180 days of all the earliest examination date. Remember, we remembered that by clinical team report has 18 letters in it. You add a 0 and you've got 180 days. A medical certificate is good for 30 days within examination. So MED is 3. Add a 0 for the med cert and it's 30 days. That person is going to examine the person, that individual, one of those 4 people is going to examine the person who needs a guardian. They're going to fill it out just with the clinical team report before you leave the doctor's office or the office wherever the examination is taking place. You're going to read that medical certificate and you're going to understand what's in there. Okay, again, medications. Let me see if I can get my medication list up here. Oops. Okay, names and relationships. There is a slot in here for medications. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. All right, so there is a spot for medication that I cannot seem to find, but I can assure you, hold on, let me see if I can find that. I can assure you that the medications in here are going to be very important, just like the antipsychotic medication. This will be a good chance for me to run through this. So here's the medical certificate. There's the first page. There's the top of the first page. Here's the examination type. There's the bottom of the first page. Here is the level of alertness and consciousness that the examiner is going to put down. Now, why can't I find that medication page? But I can assure you that it's in there. and you are going to need to know the name of the medication, the dosage, and the dosage range. Okay. That person is going to sign this and date this. Once you get that the clinical team report and the medical certificate filled out, here is the contact information for you. There's a link to the clinical team report. If you Google that, you will come up with it and you can see it. And here's a link to the medical certificate that you can see. Clinical team report, 180 days. Medical certificate, 30 days. What if you have a medical certificate and it goes past the 30 days and you need to file for guardianship? You take that medical certificate back to the person who filled it out. They go to the first page. They put a comma after examination date. They put the new examination date in that, on that piece of paper, bearing down with a ballpoint pen so it leaves an impression. Then they go to the last page. They put a comma after their signature date. They put the new signature date in with a ballpoint pen and they put their initial next to it. That makes it an original. Now, I really, really want to find out if I can find the medication page for my medical certificate to use up for the last, page 2. There we go. I found it. Okay, let's see where we can find
And if
this.
you want to take questions right after that,
Yes,
Stephanie, we have
please.
a couple more minutes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right, what I need to find is page 2. Medications, here we are, right here. This is the most important thing. List medications or attach a list. That's very important. Okay, let me go to the last page. Put the links for the clinical team report and the medical certificate and how you can get help from the Volunteer Lawyers Project. If you call that telephone number, they will screen you for eligibility. It's sponsored by the Legal Services Corporation, which has a financial cutoff. If the Volunteer Lawyers Project cannot help you get guardianship, they will refer you to people who can. Okay, Nalita. Questions?
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And we have several in the chat.
Okay,
so I'm
I
gonna
hope
try
I
to-
can answer them. Please be assured, if I can't answer them, I want your contact information and I will get the answer to you.
Definitely. So some of them I think you've answered where we can find the forms. And someone has asked, my child will definitely need me to be appointed as her guardian as she's turning 18 soon. Does she
Okay,
need to be declared legally disabled and she has an intellectual disability?
okay, so that's a very good question because it reminds me that if you have somebody for whom you're seeking guardianship and there's a clinical team report, get that clinical team report and start the examination process 6 weeks before that 18th birthday. Those 3 people, the psychologist, the physician, and the social worker, can fill it out within that 6-week period. And the moment you get a completed clinical team report, call Volunteer Lawyers Project or go online for Get Help.
We have several questions and I think you've answered some of them, where to get the forms from, and
Yep.
there's several links
Yep.
that are there.
Yep.
Ms. Renee's asking, my child's turning 18 soon and
Mhm.
she's in need, and where to start? Is there anybody that can help filing the paperwork, which I think you've.
Come to the Volunteer Lawyers Project. We would love to help you and they'll screen you for eligibility.
So you can call the number or go to the website.
Yes, and we have clinics. We have virtual clinics, and we're going to go back in person soon. Every Wednesday, we have guardianship clinics. So just like everybody's on Zoom tonight, we help you with all the pleadings. That's what the court calls documents that you need to submit to get guardianship. And we help you with all of that.
And maybe we'll take, we have time probably for 2 or 3 more
Okay.
questions. Chenye says, my child's social worker told me that because my child has no intelligence disability, I only need 1 report from the psychologist within 90 days. Is it the case for a child without intelligence disabilities?
If this person needs, now this is an interesting question. I'm not sure I understand quite the facts, but if your child needs a guardian, one of those documents, either the medical certificate or the clinical team report, will have to be presented to the court. Either, you know, as I said in the very beginning, Nalita could, or Meredith could snatch me off the street and be my guardian, but you have to prove to the court medically why.
And someone else asks if you need an attorney to apply for guardianship.
No, no, you don't. You can do this on your own. You can download all the necessary documents on the Massachusetts Probate and Family Court website, just at Seek Guardianship of an Adult. The only caveat would be is if the person for whom you're seeking guardianship has an antipsychotic, then you might need some assistance.
And let's take 1 more before we move on, and then we'll try to get more questions in the end. If we have the time. The 100, someone asked, AW asks, the 180 days is between the first examination date and the filing date, correct? And not the hearing date.
That is correct. Good. Whoever asked that question, good. Yes. Yes, not the hearing date. No.
Okay, awesome. And we're going to get the list of all of these questions. So towards the end, we'll try to get them answered. And we'll have the information on the website, including the slides, and the recording will be on the SpEdPAC website. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And then hopefully we'll have more time in the end to get additional questions for all the presenters. We want to make sure everyone gets a chance to present. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Very
Nalita,
helpful.
for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. So now we're right on schedule. So this is good. I think we're going to be able to get additional questions in the end. We have Tasha Baizerman, a licensed social worker from Boston Public Schools, and also Marcia Fitzpatrick, Assistant Director for Transition Services. And I think Marcia's going to answer, and also Tasha, a lot of the questions that were asked in the chat. So you can take it away.
Great. So Tasha Baizerman was unable to be with us tonight, so I will be doing the presentation for her. And I will bring back any questions that I'm unable to answer, but I will do my best this evening. So Stephanie, can you take your screen down so that I may share mine?
Well, yes, I'm going to, I was just trying to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stop the share. Okay, good.
you.
Thank you, Marcia.
Of course. So I'm going to present on how we in the Boston Public Schools can support you while you are seeking guardianship for your child. Just a disclaimer, this presentation is not meant to provide legal advice, nor is it comprehensive or intended to substitute for legal consultation. This is a general overview of guardianship, and it was developed by Tasha Baizerman and Kathleen Ryan, along with Dr. Shara Hefter, in collaboration with Suffolk Health Law Clinic and the Volunteers Lawyers Project. So part 1, I'm going to explain what adult guardianship is. So when your child turns 18, they automatically have the right to make their own decisions regarding their education, medical needs, etc. Even if your child lacks the ability to make those decisions because of an intellectual disability, they are still automatically able to make their own decisions if you do not have guardianship. The legal term for a person that we're going to seek guardianship for is incapacitated person. And so a parent or guardian must take a legal action to keep decision-making authority so that you can support your child in making their decisions around their medical needs or their education. And you have to initiate the process. It is not automatic. So this slide is going to explain what a guardian can and cannot do. So a guardian can make decisions regarding support, care, education, and health and welfare. You can seek medical records and talk to doctors. You can apply for health insurance and other benefits. You can pay your child's expenses using their income, and you can assist them in making good choices about their lives. What a guardian cannot do is admit or commit a child to a mental health facility or substance abuse facility, make that individual take medication, stop them from buying a phone, or stop them from getting a tattoo. There are two types of guardianship that we will review, and they are general versus limited. So general guardianship is the authority over all decisions, and this is for a child who needs help with all of the activities of daily living and decision-making. A limited guardian would be somebody who has the authority over only some of the decisions that your child needs. And limited guardianship preserves the decisions that your child can make because they have the capacity to do things independently, such as taking the tea, going to the store, going out with friends. When we're talking about the timeline for the guardianship process, we want to be thinking around their 17th birthday. So one of the reasons we want to think about 17 is we want to make sure that we have a psychological assessment completed by your child's IEP team. And we want to make sure that that is an adult measure. So this is a time when you want to talk to the school-based coordinator of special education and also connect with your Strive Community Connections facilitator, who will help you with some of the paperwork to complete the CTR. They can get you started with the CTR and then do a referral to Tasha Baizerman, who will support you in getting those signatures that Stephanie was discussing earlier. So on to now part 2, which is the clinical team report. So again, this form is a written evaluation, and we use exams by a licensed psychologist, the independent clinical social worker, and your child's licensed physician. The CTR includes IQ and adaptive behavior scores, and also references historical data around your child's functioning. And as Stephanie already stated, the CTR is valid for 180 days from the date of the earliest clinician's signature only. So when the CTR team, which you can go to a clinic in the Boston Public Schools that is run by Tasha Baizerman. She is the licensed social worker, and we also have the licensed psychologist, and they run clinics. So what they'll do is they'll have a discussion with you and your child around the fact that your child has an intellectual disability. What are the life skills that your child needs support in, or that they can do independently? What life skills, again, do they need help with? And how much help do they need day to day to function day to day in the world? So then the CTR is a review of all of the testing that your child has gone through in the Boston Public Schools. So we're going to look at their psychological evaluations, any adaptive scales that were done during evaluations, any occupational therapy, speech and language, or adaptive phys ed assessments that your child has had. we're going to look at the IEP so that we can discuss strengths. What is the disability? What are the goals that your child's working on? We're going to look at the progress reports that are conducted by your child's teachers. And then there will be informal interviews with staff at the schools as well as families. So the goal of our clinic that is held at right now it's on Zoom, but it's normally held at the Carter School. And so the goal is to create equitable access to the clinical component of the guardianship process. So Tasha wanted me to stress that this is not a special education service, nor is it a mandate. And it is solely the responsibility of the family or potential guardian and not the school to petition for guardianship at the courts. So when you're asking yourself whether or not guardianship is right for your child, these are conversations that you should really start around age 14 or grade 9. When you're having your annual IEP meeting, whether it's an annual review or a reevaluation, you really want to start that conversation with the school-based coordinator of special education, as well as your child's other team members, their teacher and their related service providers. And as your child begins to develop in high school, because we know that's a time of rapid change and they're moving towards adulthood, we're really thinking about what are their adaptive skills? What are their daily living needs? Like what would be best for your child as they move into the adult world? So again, that 10th, 11th grade, age 17, around their 17th birthday, really have that conversation with your COS. You can always reach out to me or any member of the Strive team to support you in downloading that CTR. And then you can take it to your physician, your child's primary care, and then your COS can complete a referral form for you to be able to be seen at the Boston Public Schools Clinic. And then we refer you to the Volunteers Lawyers Project because they support us. So we work together, and they, on Wednesdays, like Stephanie said, on Wednesdays, they have their clinic down at the courthouse. So we can help you do the CTR, you can bring it to them and they can give you the support that you need to get through the process.
Marcia, just another 10 minutes, just to let you know.
Thanks, Nalita. I'm actually done. So WAS was a little bit of a tie-up of what everybody else has shared.
Awesome. So we will have
I'll give you back some
extra
time
for questions. I'm going to look through, maybe Bethany, you can, and other board members can help me look through to get some of the questions from the chat, unless anyone wants to also ask a question, you know, you can press to raise your hands, but we'll also look through the chat for some questions as well.
I have all the questions ready to go, Nalita, if you would like me to ask. Actually, where did you leave off? Let me start there. So here we go. My child. How do I get a psychologist? Can the school help?
So if you start at your child's school at the IEP team meeting, we have a referral form that the coordinator of special education can fill out. They send it down to Tasha Baizerman and Shara Hefter. Shara Hefter is our psychologist who can sign off on the CTR. And it's not just you get the form and they sign it. They have to do the interviews. They have to do the file review. It's a comprehensive review of your child's records throughout their time in school. But they're wonderful. They're very warm, very welcoming. They're, you know, this is something that they do because they want to support families and they want to make sure that you have what you need. So sometimes it can take a little longer than we like, but we only have the 2 people doing it. So you can start at your school. And again, I'll put my email in the chat and you can email me as well if there's any questions about that.
Thank you, Marcia. Another
We have a
question is,
hand that's raised as
Does-
well. So do we want to take that, Iris? Can
Yeah,
you
Iris, I
unmute?
just asked you to unmute if you want to ask your question.
Really quickly, I thought it might appear in the chat, but I wanted to know, what, is there, some kind of proof that I could obtain while I'm in process of, the guardianship process? While I'm in the process of getting guardianship, is there some kind of proof that I could attain that I'm in the process? Because it takes a long time. And I wasn't told until after my son's 18th birthday. So is there
Well,
something I can?
Iris, I would say that once you fill out a petition for guardianship, that you keep a copy of it because you're going to file it with the court with all the documentation that we talked about. You can get your copy date stamped, which is going to prove to somebody that you are in the process of getting guardianship.
But what I'm talking about is before I get to the point where I'm at the court. Like
Yes.
right now, I please, I don't want to take up too much time, but I wasn't informed until after my son turned 18, number one.
Yeah.
His original primary care is gone. Someone who doesn't know him tried to fill out these forms about him and can't. Somebody tried to fill out these doctors, the pediatrician or the doctor's part of the form. He can't fill them out because he doesn't know my son. And he doesn't feel secure enough to go by the history. So we have to go to Boston Medical Center and get Boston Medical Center to fill out some of this stuff, right? But Boston Medical Center is all backed up until the end of next month. So is there anything that I could get in this space of, in this frame of the game, right? That I could have just to say, I'm in the process of this. If anything comes up.
I have a colleague, I hope that she's still in the audience. Her name is attorney Eileen Klein. Eileen, would you like to, could you give a suggestion to Iris on this? Because I'm kind of stumped. If you have a physician that doesn't feel qualified to examine your child.
Right. He
Meredith,
doesn't know
any
him.
thoughts on that?
He doesn't know him, so he doesn't like know what to write. He doesn't know him.
But surely there's a chart there with a history that he.
That's what I said. That's what I said.
Meredith, what are your thoughts?
Well, I usually also have the psychologist and social worker fill out the clinical team report first. And typically the doctor, to be honest, doesn't write anything, just reads it, reads his chart and signs his agreement. If this pediatrician won't do it, that's very frustrating and surprising, and not very family friendly. You know, if your child has some capacity to understand documents, no, I was going to say maybe you can sign a healthcare proxy now. No.
None. Autism, non-communicating.
Well, I can tell you what, I'm not a parent, but I am a guardian of people. I can tell you that the one thing I would do if this is at BMC, I would get in touch with the chief of pediatrics and I would say, I don't understand what's going on here. My child has a history of care in this institution. I need to get guardianship. I have to have this form filled out. Take Meredith's suggestions. You have, Tasha has done it and Shira has done it, and take it to the chief of pediatrics. Because I agree with Meredith, this is not family friendly at all and kind of disappointing.
I think Iris, what Eileen and Stephanie was saying,
I use that phrase.
Yeah, I think it's best to get. I think what they were saying, Iris, is best to get to go with the psychologist report, because I've done the guardianship, my husband and I, for 2 of our children. So once you have the psychology report and also social worker, basically, I mean, that's what the doctor did, the pediatrician is read those reports, and that helped the doctor to understand, because sometimes the doctors don't understand the process, but once they read the reports, they're like, okay, we kind of get it. So I think that's a good suggestion.
And
let's-
Iris, if you want to email me, Iris, if you want to email me, we will get your CT, we'll get you the referral to the clinic. We'll get you connected to Tasha and Shira as soon as we can. And we'll get that CTR started so that you at least get your first signature going, so we can get this moving for you.
Someone else has a question, Teresa. I have guardianship of my 12-year-old great granddaughter. I would like the grandmother to have joint custody. Where do I start? So it's a question about joint guardianship.
So
Anyone?
joint guardianship, in order to have, it's called co-guardianship. And what you need to do is file a petition to remove the present guardian, and at the same time, file a petition to be co-guardians. And again, I'd like to put a plug in. Marcia was so gracious to say that she works with Volunteer Lawyers Project. Absolutely give Volunteer Lawyers Project a call. They would be happy to help you should you be financially eligible. And we could help you do that. It's just paper. It's paper. If it's a minor, it's not going to be, you don't have to do the medical documentation.
SG.
We have another question. We have questions from earlier in the chat too, that people started asking about guardianship way in the beginning of the meeting. Here's another question. Does guardianship need to be renewed? Is it permanent?
If you get, when you get your decree and order for guardianship, if you get decree and order for guardianship for a minor, it terminates on the 18th birthday unless there's something else that is going on with that person and they extend it. Once you get guardianship of an adult, that's it until something happens to the person who needs the guardian or something happens to the guardian. And every year you have to file your annual care plan report. And I'm a guardian, so every year I file annual care plan reports on those people for whom I serve as guardian. But no, unless something happens, the guardianship remains in place.
And we have another, thank you so much. We have another hand raised. Lisa, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, that was actually one of my questions. And so my follow-up question to that is, I have a older child who's 24 that I filed for partial guardianship when she turned 18, and it was granted. But we have since moved, so I haven't gotten any information about that care plan. So I haven't filed one in a few years. So I'm wondering, is her guardianship lapsed if we don't file the care plan? Because I have not had a communication from the court about that.
I want to go back to what you said about partial guardianship. What does that mean? Partial guardianship.
It was like the limited guardianship.
Oh, limited guardianship.
Yes.
Excellent. Yes. Okay. So all you have to do is download an annual care plan. You go to Massachusetts Probate and Family Court. You can download an annual care plan, fill that out. And just the most important thing when you do your annual care plan report, and I happen to have it a blank right in front of me, is you do your reporting period from the last time you filed your report up until the current time. Here, you're supposed to do it every year on the anniversary of your appointment. But don't worry, if you haven't done it, you probably have not gotten a letter from the court yet. So you're still the guardian, but you definitely need to do the care plan. And again, you can call the Volunteer Lawyers Project and we would be happy to help you do that. We do that all the time. Happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your question, Lisa. Thank you, Stephanie. Everyone, don't forget to fill out the exit survey. We have
yes.
two
Now,
more.
Bethany, where is that exit survey?
In the chat, right in the chat.
Okay.
So we have two more hand raised and we have 4 questions in the chat. So I think that will probably bring us to the end of the presentation. Isabel, if you would like to unmute and ask your question, go right ahead. Isabel, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
There she goes. Oh, she muted herself again.
Muted again. We can go on to the next hand raised and then come back to Isabel. iPhone, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Hello?
Sim, boa noite. Eu sabia se esse benefício te aplicava para qualquer deficiência. Por exemplo, se o menino tem problema de speech, se esse benefício também te aplicava para ele.
I believe that was Cape Verde and Creole. Okay, go ahead. Stephanie, did you hear that question?
I didn't. I just heard the Cape Verdean, but I haven't heard an English translation.
Stephanie, can you make sure you're on the English channel?
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. That is, okay, where
No
should I
problem. Can
be?
you just reinterpret the question so Stephanie can hear it?
Okay, hold on. All right, I'm on the English channel.
Were you able to hear Stephanie?
Yes, I'm on the English channel now.
Okay, so the question was, will the child be able to benefit if the child has a speech problem?
So is the question to get guardianship of an individual who has a speech problem?
Yes.
Is that well, I'm not a physician. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a medical person. Is there any intellectual disability? Okay, I'm on the English channel. I'm listening.
Yeah. So the user is not, I'm asking her, oh, there she goes. Oh, muted herself again.
Hi. Hi, my name is Anne. I have a question. My question is, my son just turned 18 on March the 8th. He has been diagnosed having autism since he was 18 months.
Okay.
In the process of filing for guardianship, and this form is very helpful. I have a question also. Now that he's 18, do we have to wait until I'm fully guardianship for him, or how do I go about it to apply for benefits? What is it? Benefits for him? What I'm trying to say.
I think we have an expert here. I think Meredith is the expert on this, not me.
Okay.
So in order to apply for benefits, you would be contacting the Social Security Administration and tell them you're applying for SSDI for an adult with a disability. But unfortunately, you do need that guardianship decree before they will let you proceed with that application.
Okay. Thank you. It's very helpful. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We have just a couple of quick, perhaps easy questions from the chat. Can both parents be guardians?
Yes, but they cannot be a PCA. Am I on the right channel now? Where am I? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes,
You are, we can hear you.
So yes, both parents can be co-guardians, but a guardian cannot be a PCA.
Okay. What happens if something happens to the child's guardian?
Well, that's the beauty of having a co-guardian, because if something happens to one co-guardian, the other one can just step in and become the sole guardian. But if something happens to a sole guardian, then there is no guardianship.
Okay, we have Another hand raised. I believe Isabel asked her question and iPhone asked their question. So we have Toa's iPhone hand raised. If you would like to unmute and ask your question.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So once we are a guardian for the child, and if that person get in trouble, like an adult, and like auto accident or violating something, is the guardian responsible for that violation or any lawsuit?
I don't know the answer to that question. Meredith, do you know the answer to that question?
Yes, so a guardian does not have any personal liability for any action that the child or person under guardianship has. So no, the guardian is not personally liable or responsible.
But I would add one thing to that, and that is good to know. That's good information for me. I would add one thing, that when you become a guardian, you sign a bond, which is a legal promise to the court that you're going to take the best care you can of the person who needs the guardian. And if somebody says you are not a good guardian, then you can come to court and say, yes, I am a good guardian. That's what that bond, part of what that bond means. But it's good for us to know that you are, as Meredith said, you're not responsible for any mischief that the person gets into.
What about if the person needs apply for benefits like health insurance, mass health, or other benefits, and are they going to look at the guardian's income and make the guardian affecting the persons? If the parents is guardian and the parents has income, is that going to affect the benefits for the child who has the parents as a guardian?
That's a great question. So once the child turns 18, the financial eligibility is only determined on the 18-year-old child's assets and their income. The parent, whether or not they're guardian, doesn't matter. The parent's assets and the parent's income is no longer asked, and it's not applicable. Social Security will only look at the child's assets and the child's income. Once that child receives SSI, they automatically are enrolled in Mass Health. They don't need to do a separate application. So it's a one-stop shopping. Apply for SSI, make sure the child has less than $2,000 of assets in their name, and it doesn't matter what the parent or guardian's assets or income is.
And one last question, can you apply SSI if you have autism?
Yes, it doesn't matter what the disability is. There is a disability commission at UMass in Worcester, UMass Medical Center, that looks at whether your child has a disability that is going to last at least 12 months, if not a lifetime, and makes it so that they are incapable of earning at least $1,350 a month. And if they are, it doesn't matter if they have autism or Down syndrome or bipolar disease, it doesn't matter what the underlying condition is. It matters if they have the ability to earn. That's what they're looking at.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We have we're at 8:32 when we have 2 questions left in the chat and 1 person with their hand raised. Would everyone be okay to stay for the 2 questions and the hand raised, or should we call it now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you so much for doing this.
I'm just going to jump in and ask one other question, because we had that translated question that kind of got dropped off and I'm not sure who that parent was. I'm just wondering, from the organizations, do you guys have interpreters if families wanted to contact you directly?
What a good question. I'm all excited about this. Volunteer Lawyers Project has interpreters. Yes.
Awesome.
In all languages. Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay, thank you. That's great
I
to know. We'll make
unfortunately
sure
do
they come.
not.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. John has a hand raised. Would you like to, John will be the last hand raised that we take. I'm sorry. John, if you want to unmute and ask your question, go right ahead.
Thank you. I had a question. When my wife and I apply for guardianship of our son, and he's only 15 at this point, is it advisable that I have my older son also added as a guardianship if, God forbid, something happened to my wife or I? So
you're talking about having 3 people be guardianship, mom, dad, and a brother?
if potentially, I mean, down the road, I know we could probably add him if something happened to us, but I was just
Well,
curious.
You can do that. You can have 3 people as co-guardians. If you're going to add somebody after you have a decree and order of guardianship, then you have to do a petition to remove the guardians and then do the process over again. So to alleviate any confusion, you could do 3 co-guardians, but you all have to agree on the care, the welfare and the care of the person who needs the guardian. So if you all get along, I think that's an okay idea. I don't usually recommend it, but this sounds like a good plan. You do get along, right? Everybody gets along in the family?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
I just have one thing for Iris, if she's still on here. I don't know if she's still on here. I just Googled the chief of Boston Medical Center Department of Pediatrics. And that happens to be Robert J. Vinci, MD, just in case, just as a piece of information for her.
Thank you, Stephanie. We have 2 last questions. Everyone, don't forget to fill out the exit survey. And just a reminder, this video tonight, and along with all the presentations and slides, will be available on the SpEdPAC website. Last 2 questions. One is, how long does it take to obtain guardianship once paperwork has been submitted?
Good question. Suffolk Probate Court is having some issues these days. I would hope to say within 6 weeks. You should get a citation at least 2 weeks after you've filed. They should send you some paperwork that you're going to need to work through. Again, call the Volunteer Lawyers Project. We like to help people do that. If you file something and you haven't gotten any communication from the court, especially Suffolk, within 2 weeks, you need to call them or go down there in person and ask what the status of your case is.
Okay, thank you. And the last question is, my child doesn't take meds, but is on the autism spectrum and needs some help. I've set up for retesting, but it doesn't start until May. Would that stop me from getting guardianship?
Not if you can have a clinical team report completed. And if I know that if you have one autistic person you've met one autistic person. I'm thinking from what you just said, a limited guardianship might be a consideration here. So consider that. If you go on the website, the Massachusetts Probate and Family Court website, if you just download a decree and order, at the very bottom on the 4th page is a limitations page. Now, why the court has it there, I can't tell you. But that limitations page is something that you should go over, because every box that's checked on there, that person who has the guardian, that's what the incapacitated person can do on their own. So take a look at that. Again, Massachusetts Probate and Family Court website, guardianship of an adult, decree and order, download the whole thing, look at the last page, look at the limitations.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Everyone who has their hand raised, we're so sorry we can't get to more questions, but put your questions in the chat right away. We'll download the chat and we'll make sure that all the questions are answered. We will post, we'll have your questions answered by the presenters and we'll post them on the SpEdPAC website. Again, don't forget to fill out the exit survey. And thank you so very much for joining us this evening. Thank you to all the presenters. Your information was just so, I would say informative, but that's redundant, isn't it? Thank you so much for presenting. And
so Bethany, one last question. How many days for a clinical team report? 180.
180 days.
180.
There
Okay.
you go.
Thank
Okay.
you so much, everyone. And please check out the links for the exit survey, all the other surveys, and then all the information will be posted on the website, the Boston SpEdPAC website.
Put your questions in the chat. We're downloading the chat. We'll hang on.